Do you feel inspired?
Yeah, eyebrows, fantastic.
That's not why you're here. I guess it's like this big thing that like many of us identify with, but we can't really define. So like my Nigerian identity might be more Yoruba when I'm at home and then more Nigerian when I'm here, because we feel like we're all in this together, like High School Musical. So again, to be honest, most of us don't really know what it means, but it's somewhere in between culture, food, language, and tons of stereotypes. Within Yoruba culture, there's a certain perception of how people behave and things that are important to us that are seemingly not important to other cultures. A really good example is like greeting. People find it really important to emphasize greeting in Yoruba culture, and it's seen as kind of that you're well brought up and you're well trained or whatever. There's the assumption that because other cultures don't greet the way we greet, they're not as cultured. But if someone doesn't know that kneeling down is an important thing, they might respect you, but then they don't kneel down, and then you think like, you know, this person is impolite or whatever. I guess it's like a mixture of those stereotypes and those learned behaviors that we have. In Nigeria, you're not always aware that you have such a strong ethnic identity until you go somewhere else and then you realize that something is shifting slightly. When I was in Nigeria, I never felt that I identified more strongly as Yoruba. But then now, when I look back, I can see that it has slightly shifted. Some people who do very, very strongly identify as Igbo first or Hausa first or Fulani first, I think they might have a different experience. They're always subtle things, which is why you kind of have this subconscious sense that you're Yoruba first, even though you might not fully be able to articulate or fully identify with it. So it's little things like people making subtle jokes about how one other culture they can't greet, or you being friends with someone for a really long time, but they say one day, like in passing, how like their parents absolutely don't want them to marry someone who is Yoruba. For me, I never really felt, you know, Yoruba first, you know. It was kind of always under the surface because there are things that you hear growing up that kind of reinforce that really subtly. My strong sense is that we displace our tribalism. We displace our tribalism from the way it is when we're in Nigeria, like, oh, Igbo people are like this, Hausa people are like this. We displace it to other black people when we're outside of Nigeria. So it's like, Ghanaians are like this, other Caribbeans are like this, and then British Nigerians are like this. It's almost like you've been taken out of your comfort zone, whether you realize it or not. So you can't really afford to be tribalist because you guys all have to band together as Nigerians. But now you can be tribalist against them. But in terms of identifying with other black identities, I think it's hard because it's a very push and pull thing. Because when you're in an environment that classes you as part of an ethnic minority, that minority covers other groups apart from Nigerian. Some people feel frustrated by the sense that different black identities are being conflated. People want to instinctively push back on it, like, no, I'm not black, I'm Nigerian. Like, it's great for you to still hold on to kind of your Nigerian identity, but for you to try and segregate and almost suggest that one is superior, no one is going to see you on the road and be like, oh, I won't stop and search you because you're African. It's not helpful for us here to really try and emphasize how we're Nigerian and we're not like X or like Y. If it's more of a sense of kind of everyone embracing their culture and their identity and their history and their ancestry, I think that's great. But if it's more of a sense of like, don't lump me with them, it's kind of like, you've been lumped. So it's kind of as simple as that. I don't know if what I feel is patriotism, depending on how you define patriotism. Patriotism often is seen as a loyalty to the state, and I think sometimes that can be dangerous. Yes, I think it's important for us to care about what happens with the government, but I think it's because of the impact that that has on the people and the affinity that you have to the people. I do think it's important to care whether you go back or not, because if you go back, the state in which the country is when you get there matters. And if you don't go back and you have any loved ones who are there, the state in which the country is matters as well, because people you care about are there. If no one that you care about about is there. The fact that you are seen as Nigerian, whatever is going on with the country might directly or indirectly affect you. I remember when worldwide media really got more of a grip on the Boko Haram insurgency, all of a sudden people who would typically think Africa was a country, if I would say I was Nigerian, would ask me like, oh, is that where Boko Haram, is happening? If I had no connection to Nigeria whatsoever, just people hearing my name and getting to find out that I'm Nigerian, they immediately made that link of like, Boko Haram. So I think the state of the country does matter, and it does affect us, whether or not we're affected directly or immediately or indirectly or in the long run.
Sometimes, you have these moments when you doubt yourself. You wonder, am I really doing a good job? Is what I'm doing making sense? And then you slay your jollof rice and you're like, yeah,